Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Software Open Forum question and answer session. This is a little bit of a different format than we've done in the past. So what we're going to do is have a session where some of you submitted questions when you registered. And then there are some of you that have asked questions, the same question a lot of you have. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie those in, answer those, and then we'll open it up at the end in case anybody has any last-minute questions. I am Jill Goff. I am Software Support Specialist for Radian and WECO, and I have Ryan Moffett with me today, who is acting as my Vanna White, my co-host for the session. We do have a fairly large group, especially in this open forum, so we're going to ask that you remain muted. And if you have a question that you have not previously submitted when you registered, you can either type it in the chat of the webinar, or you can raise your hand, which is next to your name in the participants window. When we get to that portion, we'll call on you, read the questions if you've typed it in, or call on you to ask your question, and then at that point you can be unmuted. So at this point, let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. And our first question is one that many of you have. What is the best practice for backing up your data? How do I back up the database for WATnet? How do I back up my database for Winboard Embedded? And what other files do I need to back up? And this could be just for before a routine update of your software, or it could be when moving to a new PC. A lot of you are migrating or have migrated from Windows 7 to a Windows 10 PC, and you want to pick up everything you have on your Windows 7 PC and move it over. So these are some of the things you can do to back up. This information is always available with an email or a call, and this webinar will also be recorded, so you can also go back and reference it in the future. So to answer these questions, next slide. For your WATnet database, the file locations, there's a few different ways to do the backup. You can go directly to your file location. And depending on whether you have a 32-bit or 64-bit PC or installation, you will go to the C drive, program files, and either your x86 or not, your Microsoft SQL server, and then you're going to see an MS SQL, and you're going to see a 10.5, an 11, a 14, a 13, a 16, and 18, somewhere in there where that ... is. You're going to see a number there in that folder. Inside there, you're going to see the MS SQL folder, and inside that data folder is where you're going to find the WATnet Plus database files. There's a WATnet Plus log and a WATnet Plus file. You want both of those. Additionally, if we ask you to send us your database, that's one of the locations you can go to, zip those up, and send them over to us. You may need, I need to stress this, very important, you may need your IT or DBA assistance to do this. Not everyone has access to zip up and make any accessing to those locations. So you should have just a read-write access, but sometimes you won't be able to get them to zip them up. For Winboard Embedded, that's your RWs, your WEs, your Bantams. There is a database on there as well. That is your Winboard Embedded software. And that file location is C, WECO Apps, Shared. And inside that WECO Apps Shared folder is the we20.db. And I failed to put that on there as well. But that's the name of the database file. That's usually one that can be emailed to us if needed. Some other backup files. Again, if this is more if you're moving to a new PC, we have seen where Windows updates have come in and affected some of these other locations. So it's not a bad idea to know that you have them. And we'll go through some common errors, which I know a few of you have asked questions on. And they might pertain to these locations. So it's also good to be familiar with some of these locations. The WATnet series of software, there is a connections.config file. That is what's responsible for your connection to the database. So you have your software, and then you have your SQL database. And that connection file is what the software uses to know where to go, what database to go to. So that is in the C program data/WECO. Also, it's important to note you might not have immediate view of your program data folder. That is something you will need to see. If you can't show hidden files, you'll need to get your IT or DBA involved as well. And then there's the user config, which stores your user preference configurations, your views, report settings, widgets, things like that in the WATnet suite. And that is at your C users folder, and then it's going to be your username logged in. So in my case, it would be jgoff. And then the app data, local, WECO, and then you'll see a WATnet, and then whatever software you're running, whether it's Express or Basic or Limited or Plus. And then there'll be something called a strong name in that long WATnet folder. Inside there is your user.config. So again, these are not things you have to know off the top of your head, but there are things that you might want to just realize that they're there, and we can send you the locations if we ever need you to sometimes rename them, and we'll get into that in a little bit too when we see these errors. For Winboard embedded, there is a, and I put we20.db. It's actually an INI file is what I wanted to reference. It's a we20.ini, and that is similar to what you would see in those connection config and user config files for your WATnet. But that's a we20.ini. We might ask you to take a look at that or send that to us. All right, so next. Next. All right, so this is a very popular generic question. What does this error mean? And I'm just going to show you a couple, and I'm going to just give you a few tips on what's the best way to get the information to us. We know that these are not exactly very clear, especially if you're not familiar with our terminology. Some of these are very generic errors. But what I can do is show you some of the things that come up that will give you some help in determining what to do when you see this. We've seen some of these come in when you're trying to install WATnet Basic or WATnet Express, where you're not able to create the WNDBA user. And what that is whoops, I didn't mean to go back there. What that is the one of two things. You either don't have permissions to create that user, and we'll give you kind of a hard stop right there. To do any installations of our software, and especially in the SQL Server, which is a Microsoft requirement, you have to have administrative privileges to be able to not only install software, but on that Microsoft SQL Server software to generate the database and the database tables. So again, IT, DBA might need to be pulled into this. If you have full admin credentials, wonderful, but a lot of folks don't. The other issue is if you are in a utility that has a very specific password requirement in length, or it has to have a capital letter, a special character, a number, it can't have repeating characters, it has to be 15 characters long, things like that. You might get this error as well because the script for the installation has a very specific password built in. We can help you get past that, and all you have to do is give us a shout if this is the issue you're seeing. And again, this is on the installation of WATnet Basic, WATnet Express. The next error that you might see is an error occurred while connecting I keep double clicking. An error occurred while connecting to or updating the database, and that the string would be terminated or truncated, or an object reference not set to an instance of an object. This first one, the error occurring while connecting, that is usually a network or permissions or credential error that either you don't have permission to reach where you're trying to reach, whether it's a file location that you're trying to write to, or whether it's a database you're trying to connect to. So either you don't have the correct credentials, you don't have the correct or appropriate level of permissions, or if you are trying to connect through a network setting, there might be some sort of firewall or block that is impeding that connection. So these are the things that you want to make sure you're talking to us about. But again, IT and DBA might be the ones we have to get with. This second one, the object reference not set to an instance of an object. That's a very generic overall that just says you're trying to put some data in a field that it's not accepting it. So you've either mapped a field to only have 4 characters and you're trying to put 5. You have a date where you're trying to put a different format, or where you're supposed to have a date, you don't have a date. Things like that, where you are not following the guidelines of what you have set forth in the software. It is not always really easy to find. So what we will say is send us this error. And with all these errors, if you're seeing it, send us a screenshot. Tell us what you're trying to do when the error occurred. And if something changed, we just recently updated this PC. It's a new user. We did a network update last night. Things like that, because those are the things that can help point us into the right direction. It's very rare that a software uninterrupted or unassisted will just change itself. So there's usually something on the outside influencing that change. So sending us this screenshot and what's happening at the time of the error is very helpful and will help us get that answer to you a lot quicker. We do have requests for more clear error messaging, and that's on the list. So you've been heard. We've noted that, and yes, we agree it'll be very helpful. But for now, we're hoping that just letting you know what to send to us will help us get through this for you in the interim. Okay, this is primarily what you're going to see on the field test units, Winboard embedded. This is really more of a hardware, the first save error. If you're getting somewhere where you're seeing a date of 1753 and 1900 and 2002 and something that's just a very weird error, give us a shout. There's a few different things. It's mostly our technical team that will be able to help you with that. It could be a battery of the unit. It could be needing a Windows restore. So when you see something like that, it is not normal, and yes, it means give us a shout. This little tiny one that has so much writing on it, I'm just going to tell you, if you see something that says Odbc driver, that's probably something you're going to want to talk to us about. We're finding that that is somewhat of a generic error, but that's usually coming up when you're trying to sync from WATnet or Winboard embedded to WATnet. And it means you either don't have the right credentials, you don't have the appropriate credentials, there is something blocking it. And in other cases, we found where there's a mapping discrepancy. And I'll get into that mapping stuff as well, because it all kinds of ties into this. And I think a few of you have seen this issue come up. So let's go ahead and get through it for you. Okay? And if I can go to the next one. And this is probably one of the most common, where the SQL server does not exist or access is denied. It worked yesterday, it doesn't work today. remember I told you about that connections.config? That file, through a Windows update or a utilities network update, can be wiped out or overwritten where your credentials are no longer recognized. Another thing that it could be is that you no longer have access to that file. And when we're seeing this is you launch the software, you've entered your login credentials, and you have to do it every single time you launch the software. What you want to do is get your IT or DBA to make sure you have unfettered read-write access to that connection.config file. And when you have that, and that means no prompting. So if you are navigating to that file location, you want to go in there without it prompting you that you need to have certain permissions, and when you click OK, it goes through. That needs to be removed. The software does not know to hit OK when a prompt comes up. So that's what you want to make sure you have. In most cases, you can go in and rename the connection.config file. You can rename user.config files when you see these kind of errors. If you have unfettered access and can rename them, usually then when you relaunch the software, it will launch for you. Again, this is not something you'll have to remember every time, but it's hopefully going to trigger something when you see this, like, oh, I know this is something, and it's not a panic. Give us a call, give us an email, and we'll get you squared away. And again, I'll probably request that Chad put this on our What's New news widget, just kind of under the tips and tricks, so you have this information at your fingertips. Okay, the next question came in, how do you build a test sequence? And this is, I'm going to go to WATNet Express, and let's see if I can bring this over. All right. And so what you want to do is, we're going to go to the admin, and you're going to go to the Winboard administration, because the test sequence is in your Winboard arena. This is the same in WATNet Basic as well. So I'm going to show you in Express, but in Basic you do the same thing. So admin, Winboard administration. There is an edit meter test sequences right here. Okay, select that. And if there are any existing test sequences, they'll be listed here. Usually the software comes with some defaults. But say you want to create one of your very own. There's a couple of different ways to do it. The first way is you can use this add button up top. And anybody who's gone through training or talked to me on the phone, you'll remember that the add and delete on the top toolbar is usually for an entire population. And then on the right side of your screen is your add steps, your individual lines. This is the same thing. If you hit delete right here, you're going to delete the entire default sequence. So I'm going to say yes, but you're going to see it's gone. So we're going to go back in and we're going to redo the default sequence. So we're going to add, and we're going to call it default. You can call it whatever you want. I remember in the legacy software and the Winboard 2 software, the sequences were numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. If you want to stick with that, go right ahead. This is your software to do as you are comfortable with. And so your first step is going to show up. It's going to populate full load, and we'll do a full load, light load, power factor, and we'll just do that as a default sequence. So we've already got the full load, and the nice part is it populates everything for you. If you want to make any changes, say you want to make this a single-phase service, or say you want it to be your three-phase service. Okay, we'll do a three-phase. All right, and you just want to do a series full load, light load, power factor. And you can set your optics that you're going to use for that sequence here. And so we'll pick optic coupler. When you pick add step on the right, it's going to automatically replicate the first line that you have. So really all you have to do now is change this to light load, and you see your current and phase angle change. And now we're going to do power factor, add step on the right, and add your power factor. Okay. If you want to add reverse steps, you can do the same thing. You just add, and you'll pick this reverse power. Okay. If you don't want a step, you delete it. If you want to insert a step, you highlight the one where you want to put it, and you click Insert Step, and it'll insert it. Okay, so those are your steps on the side. Save what you want. How do you edit a sequence? Say you want to add a creep step, and you want your meters to stay creeped, so you can use your metering third-party software through that optic coupler to keep it going, or keep it lit up so you can read the registers or read the dial reads. All you have to do is add a step and add your creep step. Okay? Now, if you have a sequence that is kind of what you want, but you're not quite there, and you don't want to, so when you get into these three-phase sequences, if you don't want to build the whole thing over again, you find one that's kind of what you want, and you can do what's called a save as. So we'll pick a shorter one just to save a little time. We'll do the single phase and say we want to do a reverse power on this one as well. Well, we don't want to, we've got 3 steps already built. So let's call this single phase reverse. Okay, so now you've got your default, your single phase. It's still there. But now you've got your single phase reverse, and you've already got your 3 steps started. It's a shortcut. We're going to add your full load reverse, add a step. Remember, it keeps everything where you had it before, and all you need to do is change your test. Light load and power factor, and then save. Okay? If you have any specific questions or things you have specific questions or issues on, just give us an email. Send us an email, and we'll be glad to jump on a WebEx with you or talk it out with you and help you out any way we can. All right, so now we're going to go back to more questions. How do you set up data sync from Winboard embedded to WATnet? This one is probably the hardest to explain. And since everyone's setup is a little different, I'm going to give you a general overview just to give you an idea of the things you need to see, the things you need to look at, and we'll see how well it goes. If you have specific questions that you think are very specific to you, let us know. We'll take your information, and one of our team will give you a call, and we'll work through it. But this might raise some more questions at the end of the session. So the next question I can answer is the first thing you want to do is make sure that your Winboard embedded data view, and that's the top part of the window, and your Winboard or WATnet window is on the bottom. You want to make sure that they are mapped to match. There's nothing worse than trying to send meter data over to nothing, where you don't know where it's going to land. The goal is to take your meter number, which is the first line on the top window, your meter number. It is mapped in the WATnet column off to the right. It's highlighted in yellow to the EQP_NO field in the WATnet database. And the reason you know that is you can see that in WATnet, in the lower window, the EQP_NO is your meter number. And so what you need to make sure is that your base, your tester ID, trouble codes, anything you have on your RW, Bantam, WE, that has a WATnet column on the right-hand side, which they all need to have one, because that's how it knows where to send the data. You need to make sure that that's what WATnet is expecting to show it in. So it's going to be a handoff from Winboard embedded to WATnet Express, and you want it to be a like-for-like handoff. If we are handing off a trouble code to a results user 1 field, and WATnet doesn't know that it's supposed to show results user 1, you're not going to see it in WATnet. So that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing I think I'm going to have to show you live, and not to scare anyone or anything like that, but it's just, it's going to be a little less painful, I think. And let me grab it from my other screen here. Sorry about that. All right, here's your Winboard embedded. As you may or may not know, this top right corner, if you have the window or the WATnet icon, you know you're connected, and you'll usually see the last sync date. If you are not seeing that, you are not connected. How do you make sure you're connected? Well, administration is your bottom left box. You're going to go into administration, and you're going to go into options. Again, bottom left box. And you're going to see this crazy thing. The first thing you want to make sure is that your network options are set to your WATnet plus Express basic option. That is the option you're going to want to connect to. If you are set to legacy, you are never going to connect to a WATnet. You may be syncing to legacy now, but if you are going to WATnet, right, basic, Express, limited, plus, you do want to be on this WATnet, the second radio button. All right. The next thing you want to do is in your connection options right here. And you're going to get ODBC connection. So what you will need to go through is this ODBC admin. And we do have a document that has helped quite a few folks get through the pain of connection. So you're going to go to System DSN. I have several of these, so please we'll just stick with the SQL Express. And I'm configuring. This is, in this dropdown, you should, if you have connection, if you have a direct Ethernet connection from your field test unit to the PC, and connection, really what you're looking for is connection to the database. So if you're on WATnet Basic, your database is going to be hosted on the local PC. If you are using WATnet Express, you could have it on the PC, or you can have it as a central server. It's going to be difficult either way if there are firewall, security softwares, malware, things like that that are in play that are going to block that connection. So again, IT, your DBA, you may need to spin us in, but anything like that, you're going to make sure that you've got a clear path. If your IT folks want to give us a shout, we could tell them what ports to look on and things like that. But you're going to want to be able to see your server name, and that's the database server that you're going to have in SQL Server Management Studio, and it's also the server that you're connected to in WATnet Basic Express, okay? So you'll see that there. Once that's filled in, you're going to put your credentials in there. So if I haven't changed them, you will get past that. If you can't get past this, it will hang up and you'll get that blue circle that goes on forever. That means there's something hanging up. If it doesn't happen fairly quickly, you know there's an issue. You've got the wrong password. You don't have the credentials. There's a firewall. There's something blocking it. Once you get past it, you want to make sure you've got the WATnet Plus option selected. A lot of times it'll say master. This is a big source of failure. If you don't change it to WATnet Plus, you're not going to get it, because if it's trying to send data to a master database, it doesn't have the same table structure, same table name. So make sure you pick WATnet Plus, next, and then you finish. And this is what you should see. You can test your data source, and you should hopefully get that. If you don't get that, if you get anything but that, let us know, okay? You want to make sure that the credentials you entered are in here, that you can also test your connection and see it here. That's all you need to do, okay? Save that. You want to save that and close. Then, once you know you have a connection and you know you've got your fields mapped correctly, you can then do your sync. And you can either sync using the button. You can also have in the administration window, in the options, this right here, the sync time interval. If you plug in and connect to the network, some folks have it within 0 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes. It will immediately start to sync, and it'll do it every 5 minutes. If you don't want that to happen, up this sync time interval, because regardless of whether you push that button, if it hits this interval and you're connected, it's going to start syncing. Okay? Could be a blessing, could not be. Okay? Mike, I see a chat, and Mike, if you'll unmute, I'm not sure if this pertains to this or if I missed this part of the chat earlier in a different portion. So if Mike, if you can unmute, can this be done with a file export import as well? And tell me, is this the section you're talking about, or was it an earlier section?
No, it's basically in lieu of an actual connection, Ethernet connection to the database from either the RW to the WATnet Express or Bantam to the WATnet Express. Could this be done with a simple file export import versus a direct connection?
Absolutely.
Of this whole process. Yeah,
yes, absolutely. Okay, while
Great.
we're here, I'll show you that. Thank you, Mike. That's a good question.
Thank you.
What you would do, and let me see if I can do a quick sync. So what you'll see is I just did an incremental sync. I don't know if I have data actually on this database, so we're going to look and see. You would go to Administration, View, Edit, Test Results, and your meter test results. I don't think I have. Oh, yes, I do. I have 2. Woohoo! Okay, so what you can do is you pick the ones you want to load. You click OK. All right, and then what you can do is you do this export here. And you can export meter results in the current window, which means it's going to export all of these right here in this window. You can use a date range if you want. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to export for import into WATnet. Now, there will be additional steps set up because whenever there is a manual file import, and we will be getting to this, so Mike, thank you for the great segue. You do want to make sure you have a matching import structure set up. So this file exports in a certain structure. And you want to make sure that if you're looking at meter number, serial number, AMI, serial number, tester ID, test date, full load, light load, power factor, and test reason, you need to make sure that your WATnet import structure is set up in that same order to receive that data. It's going to know that, all right, this section here, this goes in this file. This part goes in here. And so it's just a mapping thing. Again, we can help you with that, but it's something that you really want to make sure that you are aware of before you're doing syncing, especially if you don't have confidence in that setup. Please let us know, because there's nothing worse than doing that and then finding out it's all wrong, because it's very hard to back that out, which then I will circle back to the very first thing I talked about is backups. And backups are so helpful. Anytime you're going to do something new, something you're not sure of, back up your databases, please, please, because it's so much easier to roll back. If we don't have something to roll back to, there's not a lot we can do. If you don't have a restore point from previous, it's so difficult, and we want to help you so much, and we hate that we might not be able to. So please back up, back up, back up before you make any curious changes, or let's try this, or hey, you know, hold my beer kind of thing. Don't do that. Back up, please. Okay. So what you'll do is you will click OK. We're going to export to a file, and it's going to, oh, it keeps popping over to my other screen here. I apologize. It's going to ask you to name the file. All right. And you can put it anywhere you want and then save. Okay. This is an error you may see. If there is an error and you're not sure what it is, let us know. This is probably because I don't have a lot of, my sync wasn't fully done before I did this, but it generates a file. It is a flat file, and it tells you where it's saved. So that's the location. And you can put it on your desktop. You can put it on a thumb drive. A lot of people like the thumb drive option because of that direct connect is not available. If you can't do it to a thumb drive and you can't connect, we're kind of stuck. So let us know. Maybe we can be creative and try to help you find something. But you need to either be able to get this off in this flat file or in a direct sync. Okay. And then there's another question: how often should a sync be done? You know, I've got folks who do it monthly. I've got folks who do it daily. I've got folks who have Wi-Fi and do it real time. It's really a matter of what your needs are. The database on the field test unit is a standalone. So the sync also helps act as a backup, so to speak. You're getting that data off. So if you sync and something happens to that tomorrow, your data is safe. But if you don't need to do it every day and it's really a hardship, you know, we're not saying you have to. I will tell you, the more tests there are, the more time that goes past, the longer the sync will take. So it's just kind of a need, time, availability, preference. So if you have any questions or would like some guidance on what would be a good case for you, let us know and we can maybe try to help you. But really, it's whatever works best for you. Okay. All right. So there is one more topic that has come up, but I want to start by opening up to some questions. Any other questions that might have come up while I've been talking about anything I've talked about? What I'm going to go to next is importing. And like I said, I mentioned that a little bit earlier, and it's a huge source of questions. So I would like to kind of touch on that. And but before I do that, I want to see if anybody has any questions. Raise your hand or type "I have a question" or whatever in the chat window. And what I will do is I will get ready while we're waiting in case anybody is wanting to do anything. I will get the import stuff up and running because that's where we're going to go next. And I don't see anybody breaking down the door. Okay. So what we're going to go to next is importing. Whether you are importing a manufacturer flat file, whether you are importing from a third-party testing company, whether you are importing from a flat file from your Winboard embedded, there needs to be an import structure. And so in the admin section, you're going to see import settings. There is, with the software, comes a default import. And it has pretty much all the fields you would need, as you can see. If you have other fields, and this pertains to WATNet Express and anyone who has done a custom data view service or had us do a custom data view setup for WATNet Basic. WATNet Basic, you cannot edit your data view, which is your files, your fields that you want to track. If you have special fields that you need to import, some people put manufacture dates, some people put locations, things like that, things that might not be in this standard import structure. You might want to call us. We do have a full webinar that we did on this in the very beginning, and we also have a section of the manual that we can provide you with. It's really not as scary as it seems. Ask Ryan Moffett and Craig Gardner. Once you get in it, it's kind of fun to see all this. And yeah, I'm a little bit of a geek, so, you know, take it for what it's worth. But what you're going to do is you're going to take that structure. And so I'm just going to start one from scratch just to give you an overview. Again, that top add button is going to add a whole brand new thing. So we're on electric meter, and we're going to add, and let's call this embedded data. And that's coming from your flat file from your Winboard embedded, because you can't do a direct connect. All right, you start with this, and oh geez, now what? So you want to decide, is it a comma delimited folder? Are you bringing it over as a comma delimited, or is it a fixed width? Well, you can look at that structure, and let's see if I've got one real quick for you I can pull up. What you can do is map it to that field structure, and it's not cooperating. So what I'm going to do is I am going to just show you. The first thing we want is a fixed width. Okay, it's going to be a fixed width, and the first field is going to be meter number. Okay, and it's going to be a field length of 12. All right, so that means that the first 12 spaces in that file is going to be put in the meter number field. Okay, and then we want the serial number, and that is going to have a width of 15. Okay, and we're going to do manufacturer, and we're going to allow for 3. And again, I'm just kind of making this up on the fly, and we're going to do tester ID, and you use four initials or 4 meter numbers, so we'll allow for 4. Anything more than 4, that's where you're going to start getting errors. So this is where you're going to want to be sure you know what your limits are. And then we're going to do an as found full load. Whoops. And so you saw I got an error, and I failed to wait a second. So I'm going to see if I can get that back. It says invalid field width entered. Basically, I'm asking for a fixed width field. I didn't put a field width in there, so it doesn't let you go forward. Makes you go back. Don't you love it when I turn a mistake into a, I really meant to do that? All right, and we're going to let that be 6. Okay, and we're going to do as found. We'll just do power factor just because I want to shorten this up, and we only have a few minutes left, so I want to just kind of make this as quick as possible, and we're going to do 6 for that. Okay, always save up at the top. Save, 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 save. Tells you your total fixed width over here on the right is 46. And now what we want to do is we want to assign them. And we're going to go back to what we talked about a little bit earlier about that mapping, what field is going to what. So in the mapping wizard, it brings up this scary screen. So first you want to make sure you're highlighting the field you want on the left, meter number. And it is a meter field. It's not a test result. It's not a reading. It's not a comment. It's not an AMI device. It's part of a meter. So there's your meters. So you're going to highlight it and add in the meter section. This can be done with CTs, PTs, the same thing. It's the exact same setup. The field names obviously are a little different, but the process is still the same. And what you're going to do is you're going to find that EQPNO. Remember, we saw that in the previous slide that shows that that's the WATNet column it's mapped to, okay? Same thing for serial number. It's part of a meter characteristic. So now you go and you find serial number. Okay? And then you highlight manufacturer. It's a little bit hypnotic for me anymore, but it might be stressful. Ask Ryan. And manufacturer. And then you've got your tester ID. Well, that changes from test to test. So that's not technically a meter field. That's a test result field. So we want to put that in the test results window. So tester ID, we're going to add, and we're going to add tester ID. And so you see that equipment number field 1 and this accommodating field. So you can see it's actually associating it. Then you've got your full load, light load, power factor. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, and I just wanted to go through one or two of them just to show you. It's in the manual, and on the video, but a refresher doesn't hurt. So you want to see there's test steps. So you want to pick the first test step is going to be your as found, and you're going to go to that test step, and you're going to add as found. There's a few things you have to do for each one. And you're also going to add, it's going to be a series. So you want to add your element because you want to be able to determine is it A, B, C, or series test. So this is an element. And the constant is S for series. If it was A phase or B phase, you would put A or B. All right. And then lastly, you want to put the test type. And the test type is going to be full load. So as found, series, full load. Okay. If you had an as left field, as left full load, you would just highlight that and you could use this exact same step and just simply add an as left. Okay, you don't have to create a whole new as left. Okay, so power factor, you would add a step, go to 2, and you do as left. And now you're going to add your element, which is going to be series, and you're going to add your test type, which is right there. And this is going to be power factor. When you're done, you're going to save on the bottom right, and you're going to save. If you have a date format, you have to set it up here. If you don't see what you like right here, you can go to custom. You can go to year, 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 month, month, day, day, and then add and OK. If you want to see what it looks like, you can go to that data file that you want to import. Click here and you will navigate to the file locations that you might want, and it will display what you're going to see in the import. Okay? This is going to be evolving as time goes on. So, and we understand everyone doesn't do it every day. So please let us know if you have questions. What we would need to know from you or have you know is the format of the file that you're trying to import, whether it's a comma separated or a fixed width. We also need you to know the headers, what each section, what each file column and where the line of demarcation is between them. That way we can help you break it out. If we have that information, chances are we can pretty much get you right in no time flat. So we'll help you out with that, and just give us a shout on that. Okay? What other questions does anyone have? We're going to keep doing these open forums as long as questions start rolling in, just to kind of shake it up a little bit and get a little bit of a wider net on some of these issues as they come up. And but don't hesitate to send us your questions, call us with your questions, send us an email. Again, the biggest thing is a screenshot is wonderful. What version you're on, what were you doing when your question came up. Most of you are pretty good at that, and it's much appreciated. We're able to respond a little bit quicker that way. So with that, I'm going to open it up for one more call for questions, either in the chat window or raise your hand. And Ryan, you might have to help me see if there's any. Wait one more minute in case we have any slower typers. Y'all making this easy on me. I know you're all going to call right as soon as we hang up, but we love your calls. We love hearing from you. So, and you're allowed to call and just say hi too. We allow those too. So don't hesitate to do that as well. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We love being your software solutions partner, and we invite you to visit us at radianresearch.com, and that's our website. You can always email our software support at software@rrwe.net. Our technical support team is at technicalsupport@radianresearch.com. Phone number to reach us is 765-449-5576. And I love all the familiar names, not faces, and look forward to hearing from you with all your questions. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, Jill. You did a